Welcome to Master Learn. Here we'll cover an article from Psychology Today. And as usual with the article reviews, as we go through them together, I have never read this before. I bookmarked it, saw the title, thought it would be interesting to explore together. So I've never read it, and in the future I will not be reading any of these articles, or pre-reading rather. We'll go through them together so we get the live analysis. We'll make the connections on the spot. In the attention section, attention is super important today, especially when we are bombarded by noise. I was going to say news, but noise in the form of certain kinds of news and overall distractions through our devices. Huge topic to cover. We won't be able to explore all of that in one sitting here, but let's cover this because contentment, when I saw the words here, contentment and distraction, and especially this one here, distraction is a temporary fix to a lack of peace within. It's telling me something about running away or escapism. And escapism is pretty big in spiritual circles, or say conscious community circles, where the idea is to solely focus on the positive or the good things in life. Now, this is a subject that is multi-layered, so it's important to listen to the words and not hear them literally, but you must hear them in layers. Because as I just said that, one may think that we are not supposed to focus on the positive. It doesn't mean that. It means escapism would mean focusing on the positive to the neglect of solving problems. So a problem exists, and yet we still decide to focus on the positive. Now, the authentic positive would be to be able to focus on the positive and solve the problem, so that the experience solving the problem, which previously had been a nuisance or a bother, right, or something that was out of balance, we have brought it to balance, and it is also positive. So on the one hand, we are looking at an excess of positive to run away from something. And then on the other side, we are looking at being an alchemist, where we are able to take an experience and convert it or transform it so that it is what it is we want it to be. So to find contentment, forego distraction. Distraction is a temporary fix to a lack of peace within. For those of you reading this who have spent weeks, if not months, in quarantine, it's more relating to the current times, you might miss or have missed your regular life. Going to the movies, out for dinner, bowling with friends, or running into a store to pick up something have all become memories for many people. You might talk about getting back to normal in quotes, to the busyness of regular life. Rushing here and there, while formerly might have been stressful, is now where your heart and mind want to be, along with your body, just so you are doing something. This is an interesting projection, and I can imagine that a number of people may be experiencing this. There are two concepts that come to mind here, right? One of them is hell. And so the idea of hell in its biblical sense is about fire and burning, right, and suffering. But hell in its truthful sense, because we recognize, for those who have the ears and the eyes to see, right, ears to hear, eyes to see, that places like heaven and hell are realms. They are states of being, states of thinking. And so this is why someone can be in a highly ecstatic, positive, joyful state on a train, sitting down, reading the book or listening to music, whatever they're doing, and they are in a state of joy. And sitting right next to that person can be someone who is scowling or frowning and moody and dark. in terms of the energy. Same environment, same train, same seating area, same destination that this train is going for both people who intend to get off at the same stop. Yet one is joyful and one is sour. Heaven and hell are states, just as joy and scowling and sorrow and moodiness and bitterness are also states. Hell is about trap. It's about entrapment. If you thought about a place that was your ideal that you could travel to right now, imagine what it is. A place that you've always wanted to go to. Now, imagine that you could stay there for as long as you wanted. Choose any amount of time. Now, imagine that you decide you wanted to leave and come back, and you can't. Now you're trapped. For some reason, you cannot leave the area that you once wanted to go to. What's going to happen, what likely will happen, and what this particular first section is trying to describe here, is that the moment there is a feeling of entrapment, the moment there's a feeling of it's not being able to be mobile and move as one freely chooses to, that starts the experience of hell, which is an entrapment. Hell is the opposite of freedom. And so we would say then, if hell is the opposite of freedom, then heaven is, especially in its metaphysical sense, is about freedom. It's about being able to come and go as one pleases, to be able to travel. So let's continue. If there is a lesson to be learned from the downtime many people have been forced into thanks to the COVID-19 virus, it is that distraction ruled most people's lives. And I could see, I remember reading a report about the streaming services have been making bank because of more people being home. And not to say that people are deliberately doing this for distraction, but other resources within the home have been used, and namely that's streaming. So your Disney, Netflix, and Hulu and such. Having something to do, somewhere to go, someone to see, the article continues, and something you needed to be is what constituted normal. So they're not using the word heaven here or freedom, but they're talking about the ability to travel, the ability to exercise one's physical will, or the physical embodiment of will, and being able to go as one pleases. Now, admittedly, in many cases, you might live in a small apartment and be climbing the walls, or maybe you don't enjoy your family and are tired of spending day in and day out with them. So this alludes back to that idea of not being able to escape. This is the hell, right? The perceived hell. Now, mind you, just like the person sitting on the train who's experiencing joy and the other one is experiencing bitterness, it doesn't mean that this is a guarantee. So some people may be experiencing this while others may not be. And if you've listened to any of the previous article reviews, we've talked about alchemy, we've talked about transformation. And at the more advanced levels of this is easier to conceptualize in the intellect and maybe more challenging in practice. Every experience can become lead into gold, so to speak. Any experience thrown at us can be transformed and made to advantage. So even though there is this situation where one is quote unquote trapped, the perception of the experience is what creates the hell or the heaven. Now, if we are trapped in a place, or quote unquote trapped in a place, and it's just more restrictive in terms of our movement, we still have other choices. We can read, we can learn, we can listen to an audiobook, And if we choose to stream, if we choose to watch television, if we choose to do something like that, we can still perceive how to use those resources in a way that supports our growth. Again, turning lead into gold. So with family, it doesn't have to be hellish. With family, it can be enjoyable. Perhaps once this time passes, right, this phase passes, and we're not around the family as much, we can reflect on these times where we were in touch with them more often and appreciate that closeness. The article continues. Maybe you are a single parent who needs to work and there is nowhere open for the young child to go. Now, there are several perspectives on this particular sentence alone. A lot of complications going on with parents having a challenge getting to work because of complications and the poor decision making going on in the schools with regards to having the children return back to education. And no one's really asking the question, which is it would be an alchemical question. If the job, the type of job, creates a difficulty in being able to manage or be with the children or to serve them, then why not think of the skills that are needed to acquire a job or a profession or a type of entrepreneurship that would enable it to happen? How about starting something online, an online business, identifying a skill, and it won't be immediate, but taking the steps to build up a skill so that a service can be provided online, and that allows the parent to become more mobile. It's thinking more like a business person. Just a question, right? It's just an alchemical question. There are many scenarios, the article continues, of living through quarantine that have caused pain and suffering for people. However, there is also a lesson that could be learned from living with so much downtime. And again, if we've been listening to the previous article reviews, you have to pay attention to language. And you have to remain aware of who's writing and who the writer is speaking for, because the words can create worlds. Seeing the so much downtime, there's an assumption that everyone is having the same experience, which is not true, as we've just talked about. Some people are turning lead into gold. Distraction does not equal peace. I am in total agreement with that. It gives the illusion of peace. It's pretending something is not there. Distraction does not bring contentment. I agree with this as well. Distraction is a temporary fix to a lack of peace within. This is an eloquent way, I think, of talking about escapism. When you rush, the article continues, here and rush there, and believe everything you do is necessary and important, your mind is always focused on what is next. You are rarely in one place. Now I'm going to pause here because without the discerning ear or discerning eye, we get into this language again of absolutes. When you rush here and there and believe everything you do is necessary and important, your mind is always focused on what is next. If this is read blindly, one may assume that you're not supposed to focus on what is next, which means you're not supposed to think about goals or your future or project out. It doesn't mean that. It's not supposed to mean that. This is multi-layered. We're talking about excess here. Key point is the rushing, because when this is done in an efficient way, and we're thinking of the next move, as in chess, the next step, we're doing it strategically. And with strategy, you're not rushing. You don't need to rush when you have strategy. You are rarely in one place. And this also has an element of half-truth because we really are not in one place. We are in multiple places at the same time. And to prove that, all I have to say is imagine yourself in Hawaii at the beach right now. And if you have a concept of Hawaii, you can send your mind there. How can you send your mind there? Well, you're able to form a picture. And if you go deep enough, you can experience emotional content, emotional coloring from the image. Probably at some point in time from my going through this dialogue with you, your mind probably traveled somewhere. Maybe you weren't listening to me, but you were here at the same time. It means your mind traveled. You're rarely in one place. You are moving so quickly from thing to thing that you aren't able to, quote unquote, bloom where you are planted, as the saying goes. The article continues. Distractions give your mind something to focus on, to ponder, to plan, and to consider, and most importantly, to think about what's coming next. Now, distractions almost sound like it's almost combining distractions with what we should be doing, which is we should be focusing. Pondering is helpful because pondering allows our mind to relax and tap into the subconscious. Pondering is a contemplative state. To plan and to consider, and most importantly, to think about what's coming next. These are, it's almost written as if these are presented as negatives, right? So you have to, again, be wary of the language. Distractions could do this, but also when we are in our sound right reasoning, we are also to be doing this, thinking ahead and planning and being considerate of our choices, thinking about what's coming next. It's interesting. This is part of some of the new age deception, if I could use a different word for this, that we are only supposed to be thinking in the moment. Now, one can think in the moment simultaneously while recognizing that we are multidimensional and we can think in past, present, and future. So it's not just one thing. Again, it keeps going back to this idea of multi-layered thinking, which I trust the training in these videos will assist you with and strengthen that ability, that when you hear statements, there are multiple layers, as above, so below. As the article continues, what they don't give you is a resting place. They don't give your mind the ability to be in the now and enjoy whatever might be happening in the moment. We can see where there are some pitfalls. I can see that. If there is an excess of focusing on the next, we can decrease our ability to appreciate what is happening right now. So the quality of life decreases because we are so focused on the next. I could see that happening. This virus has taught us many things, but one thing could be the importance of staying where you are in body, mind, and spirit, and learning to be okay with wherever it is that you are at any given point in time. Alludes to appreciation. That's how I read this. Presence, bodily presence. To cultivate bodily presence in a practical way, you could also take up a sport. You could take up a martial art. You could take up a more yin-based practice. You could take up a yoga practice, an internal art. You can take up painting. You could do drawing, writing, playing an instrument. A number of these arts, physical arts, can develop this ability to harmonize the body-mind system and connect us back to spirit. And with time, we develop the ability to exist in the moment and appreciate what is happening, because as our bodies are moving, as we are doing something, we're doing it with such intention that we inevitably zone into the present moment. In biblical terms, the article continues, Paul called this being content in whatsoever state I am in. Philippians 4:11. If you are not comfortable with the Bible, there are similar sayings in many different teachings. Thich Nhat Hanh, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, said, quote, the present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it, end quote. The sight is important. The see here we highlight because to see is to know. And see, in a sense, may not always mean the physical eye. To see can be the inner eye, or that pineal gland, that type of eye, the inner sight, the perception of it. Once we are able to place our attention on something, we are bringing it to life in a way. It exists to varying degrees of our attention. The problem with most lives, it continues, is that rushing is the norm. I recognize this. I could see that. The next thing, the plan, the future, and what's coming requires the most focus. And in some ways, we can look at the workplace in general, right? Not targeting any specific companies, but looking at the work environment, the work structure, where we are able to utilize technology to such a degree that we have sort of harmonized or merged what technology does in terms of speed and efficiency with the Homo sapiens. So if a computer can produce super fast and calculate and go, the Homo sapiens should also be able to do it to that degree. The speed of information, the speed of data acquisition. Data is something, if you've not investigated it before, I would recommend searching up big data or the importance of big data and how the appetite for information, i.e. data, is growing because it enables this ability to project futures. If you've not seen Westworld before, the TV series, highly recommended. It's about time, it's about presence, it is about data, especially the last season that was released. Huge reveal about data and what data is capable of accomplishing. The machines through data. Of course, the article continues, then there are the people who live in the past, the things you did or could have done or enjoyed doing. Overt reminiscing, this is talking about. The results of not appreciating. The only place there is peace is in the now. What's happening in this moment, in this place and time. Rather than a return to normal once all restrictions are lifted, what if you use this time to examine how much you enjoyed your distractions? What if you were to become more aware of each step you take and how to enjoy the step itself instead of where it is leading you? Now, we get into this binary thinking again. Now, binary, I don't mean to say one is binary is wrong, right? Because we got binary for a reason all throughout nature. But binary in this frame of thinking, meaning this or that, either or. You will see this kind of thinking quite a lot in Western literature and Western paradigms because the Western frame of mind appears to be incapable of synthesis or thinking both. So rather than saying, what if you were to become more aware of each step you take and how to enjoy the step instead of where it is leading you, we could reframe it in our education and say both. What if you were to become more aware of each step you take and how to enjoy the steps itself and become effective at knowing where it is leading you? Why can't you do both? It's inherent in the question. The bias is inherent. With a limitation, I should say. The article continues, what if you practice contentment with what you have instead of planning where you are headed and how you will get there. So more of this limited thinking rather than synthesis. It's great to have goals, it says. A positive thing to learn new ideas. Each person who can should reach for the stars and become all they can be. But doing these things doesn't mean you should have the attitude of I'll be content when this happens or that happens. Now that I totally agree with, in that peace is a frequency, contentment is a frequency. And if it's a frequency, it means that it's generated from the inside. It's not generated from the outside. A thing is not going to give you peace, just like a person is not going to make you happy. That might be a tough to digest, tough pill, but it's the truth. A person, place, or thing cannot make one happy. It can augment an experience. It can augment an emotion. A person in your life can augment your experience, but this person or place or thing is not going to be capable of injecting this state called peace or happiness into your being. The problem with that as well is if that person, place, or thing happens to disappear, dissipate, whatever the case may be, then that means you automatically lose that state. And that's not a conscious way of living. So internal, the peace and contentment, vibrational states that cultivate from within. Therefore, it doesn't matter what happens externally, your state of peace power exists. It means enjoying the journey, the article continues. You attach the word normal to everything you do. You become watchful and interested in each and every moment. Most importantly, before you rush to do something or change something or get somewhere, you stop. I like here that they mentioned rush, before you rush to do something instead of before you do something. So the rushing is that frequency, right, of being out of control and not strategic or intentional. You consider where you are and what might be positive, peaceful, and beneficial about the moment. You learn to look inward instead of outward to find circumstances that will finally bring you the peace and contentment you have been searching for, as we stated. And then the article concludes with, the good news is that the contentment lives inside of you. You just need to eliminate the distractions in order to find it. Now, we've confirmed that in our conversation, and the article ends with it. And we can also make the connection here that eliminating the distractions enables us to, quote unquote, find the peace within, or contentment within. It means that the peace power state is a default state. It is a state that we are in naturally. And when we are not in that state, it doesn't mean that we are incapable of the state. It means that something has disrupted the ability to access the state. So it is not stolen from us. It is sort of blurred, and blurred by distractions, which can be vast. In Kemet, ancient Kemet, these distractions were often considered the emotions, disruptive emotions that blind the thinking, and they were called the children of impotent revolt. And they were called children because of their stature. So the emotional disruptors are so small, they're so young, they are infantile, that they really do not have power unless we allow ourselves to give them power. And so they are called impotent because they're the opposite of potency, which is power, which means that they are not really powerful. We actually tend to just allow them to be powerful. Anger, rage, jealousy, hate, bitterness, sorrow, right? These states are impotent children. However, just like children in general, they can be disruptive if we allow them to be, and they can take over if we allow them to. So excellent article here. It was a short one, but we got to go into quite a bit of depth. Again, explore this for the first time with you. And you can find this on Psychology Today. I will be including the link in the description. So feel free to venture into this on your own. Any questions, of course, feel free to email me, tr@imtrentroads.com. You can also visit my education platform, masterlearn.co, and have a read at my blog, crownofmind.com. Be well.